Hi, I'm JC Vaughn for Scoop and the Fandom Advisory Network, here with Dan Braun, co-owner of Creepy and Eerie, and we're going to talk to him about his journey through fandom. You started out as a comic book fan. What were you a fan of, and what were the things that really got you going as a fan?
Well, what really got me, I mean, I started, early as a kid, like 5, 6 years old. I was into comic book characters, cartoons, like every other kid. But it was really the Justice League of America, and then there was the little Ideal Justice League of America figures that they used to sell. So we had a little local 5 and dime, and I'd see those figures with the Justice League logo on the little 3-pack in a cardboard, and it was just like, wow. It was like somehow it brought it to life to me, and it just fed. But then then it became that we're talking about the dawn of the 15-cent era. So that was like the time when I was actually right about when comics turned from 12 to 15. I had my own budget. I was going to the newsstand, the local cigar store. I grew up in New York City, and seeing those beautiful 15-cent DCs mostly. Although I was into Marvel, I was primarily a DC guy. I was into Batman, Wonder Woman, Brave and the Bold, all that, really everything. But Spider-Man, Fantastic Four, just loved everything. Couldn't get enough. Teen Titans, is pretty much those two. I'm trying to think if I was into anything else, but of course, then kind of above the racks was always Creepy, which was like kind of terrifying. Like I'm not sure I even wanted to know what that was. It seemed a bit forbidden, so. That was kind of looming, but I actually didn't read Creepy at that point. I wasn't allowed to read Creepy, actually, because it was a magazine and it was a little stronger content there than the Teen Titans. But I, without even knowing it, I was a fan of art originally. So it's like I noticed when in Teen Titans 21 and 22, Neil Adams did the art. It was like, wow, this is... As much as I loved Nick Cardy, and I didn't even know his name, I wasn't really tracking people's names, but I knew which artists I liked. So, of course, I started to really become aware of it, where I was sort of, it was less of a cult of personality where I was really focusing on the person, I was focusing on the artwork. And then I kind of and of course, there was always, like Kirby was a constant, so it was just like, Kirby, even back then was kind of like, the best of the best. So then when Adams came in, and then I slowly became like a Kubert fan, very slowly became a Frank Robbins fan. At first it was too much, and then I started to see like some of the stuff he did on, I think it was The Shadow, which seemed really jarring at first, and then I was like, wow, this guy's freaking genius. So it was all filtered through the art, as most kids, rather than like the writing. But then, of course, I did really get into all the the Neil Adams and Denny O'Neil stuff. And my father was a writer. He wrote for the New York Times, and he did an article in 1970 called Shazam! Here Comes Captain Relevant. And it was an article about the growing relevancy in society of comics reflecting society. So like on the front cover was Army at War 2, whatever it is, 20, I can't remember the exact number, 231 I think, where it says, "I got them all, Sarge," and then Rock says, "But they were civilians." It's just still like one of the greatest covers ever. So at that time, my father actually took I have a twin brother who was involved in Creepy and Eerie, and then I have a younger brother, and each one of us got to go to visit a comic book company at the time. Well, lucky me, I got to go to DC. So Carmine Infantino, I'm 10 and a half or however old I am, shows me around the offices. I want to believe that Neil Adams was there working over a board. I don't know if he really was. But that kind of sealed the fandom, because it made a connection between these objects that I loved and the real world of where, hey, there's a place where these things actually get made. Like, that didn't even occur to me. So when I kind of saw you know, that, and then I got taken into the room, and the room was a storage closet with steel gray shelves stacked up with recent back issues, and that was it for me. It was like seeing all those neatly stacked, you know, absolutely mint file copy, you know, DCs just one after another. And I remember this to this day. I got a nice selection, and then I kind of looked through it, and I was like, is it possible I could get Green Lantern and Green Arrow 76? They're like, oh, no, that's a collector's item already. We can't give you that. So he gave me the new issue, which was number 83, the Agnew issue. And I still have that very comic book. So,
where did you go from this point as a fan? Did you get into Creepy pretty quick after that, or did it take a while yet? What was your journey to that point?
It actually didn't take that long in terms of like actually getting into it. It was only a year or two after where I started to kind of, you know, the difference between 10 and 12 at that age, I don't know, whatever, but I started to, my taste matured quickly. So I was starting to get like, I forget what year it was that Savage Tales came out, and the Savage Sword of Conan, like Marvel started aping Creepy and Eerie, but then I started actually getting Creepy and Eerie's and kind of, you know, getting into those as well. So it wasn't actually that further along. But then I kind of like, I'd say my comic buying habits lasted from, you know, 6 years old to, you know, probably by the time I was like 14, I started to get out. So it was like 73. And I just wasn't, but up until that time, I was actually ordering through the mail. I was ordering from Robert Bell, from...
Sorry, did I yawn on that? No, okay.
It's all right. You can yawn. I know this is... anyway.
It's the East Coast time.
Yeah, exactly. No, I'm fighting the jet lag too. So from up until about 1973 or 1974, I was actually buying through the mail from, you know, Robert Bell, Howard Rogowski, all those guys, Ken Hunt or whatever his name was. Can't remember all of them. But so I was already starting to be like a serious collector. Like I'd actually bought. My first kind of big purchase was a copy of Adventure number 94, and that was like a real golden age comic. And it was the Steranko History of Comics that kind of played in there too. It's like when I was exposed to that, it was like all of a sudden like, holy cow, this is a whole other world. So I started going after that, and you know, I honestly don't even really. I think was the first year of the guide 70 or 71? 70. It was 70. Okay, so. It wasn't like I was really paying attention to the guy, but I wanted one, but it was, you know, like I was just kind of buying at whatever the price was. I wasn't really questioning it. But then, yeah, like around that time I started getting into like sex, drugs, and rock and roll instead of anything else. You know, so comic books sort of fell by the wayside, but I still always kept them. I still have almost every comic I've ever bought. And I kept them nicely. You know, they're not all like near mint, you know, 9.6s, but they're decent, you know, because I always kept them well.